Creating Your Own Job, aimed at providing you with resources and assistance to start your own business. Focusing on customer benefits, analyzing the marketplace, financial forecasting, financial assistance, creating your own job.
Welcome to Creating Your Own Job, a series that features topics and experts to help you start or grow your business. Today's show will help business owners prepare for the unexpected and the unforeseen. I'm Alexis Muellner, editor of the Tampa Bay Business Journal. And with me today are Holley Wade, Senior Emergency Planner, Hillsborough County Fire Rescue and the Office of Emergency Management, very big jobs, and Mario Iezzoni, Healthcare Practice Program Manager and Certified Business Analyst for the Small Business Development Center at USF. Welcome to you both. Good to be with you. You know, it's another year may have dodged the bullet. 1921 is a year you hear a lot, Holley, in terms of the last big storm. We're talking today about what businesses can do to plan. I guess let's start with a global view, which is Hurricane Sandy. We heard this phrase superstorm. What initially have you learned about, and what did just the recent events teach you, or what's changing your thinking about this whole issue?
It doesn't really change our thinking. It tends to reemphasize that it's not just another storm. When you look at Sandy, when she was developing, it was just this little thing that became this enormous system that impacted multiple states, and a lot of businesses found themselves without power, without supplies, and their resources that they were looking at maybe 3, 4, 5 states away, they were impacted too. So it really kind of drove home the point that just because you're a small business doesn't mean you're small. You're going to have a much larger regional impact.
Yeah, things are changing, obviously. That's a whole new way of thinking. Mario, what about for you in terms of the storm itself? Is there anything that you do a lot with business continuity, and we're going to talk about that and helping businesses prepare, but did this most recent event hitting an area that's not necessarily used to these kinds of storms change your thinking about how you want to help small businesses prepare for disasters?
It doesn't change our thought process so much as that it gives us more information in terms of how we can react to the business community. For example, one of the biggest challenges we have at the Small Business Development Center is to get small businesses to plan ahead, be proactive. And typically that's a challenge to the small business owner because they're so busy running the business day to day to be able to develop some sort of reaction plan to something like Sandy is often kind of sight unseen. Typically, we see the response by small business owners after the community's been impacted. The other thing that's quite interesting is it makes us acutely aware, for example, one of the challenges that small businesses have up there is with their flood insurance. And the fact that you may have a retail property where the cabinets on the top half of the property are brown, but the flood insurance is only going to cover the replacement of the drywall and cabinet halfway down. Right. So now you have a retail facility that isn't aesthetically pleasing to people that come into the facility. And so it makes, it just makes us more aware in terms of how we can best prepare our small businesses in case that happens here.
Well, let's take a step back from this sort of global view, and for viewers who may be small business owners of anywhere from 1 to 10, 15, the business journal sweet spot's 25 to 100. Small business can be up to 500 people. Small business is American business. But what are the real basics that perhaps some of us who've been thinking about these things take for granted, but or if I'm a business owner looking in that I haven't thought about the planning for the unforeseen, what are some of the first couple things that both of you would want to advise?
What we typically see is, number one, protect your data. Your customer base, your vendor base, you've got to have that information and you've got to have it all backed up. Your accounts receivable, your accounts payable. And when you back it up, on the thumb drive, CD, whatever, don't throw it in the same desk that the computer's sitting on.
Right.
The other thing that we want you to really concentrate on is you have the data, that's great. Now what about your people? How are you going to get in touch with them? What are their roles and responsibilities? Do they know what their roles and responsibilities are if you can't open or you have to change where you're operating from? For us, those are the two big key pieces.
I have to agree with that. Those are two excellent points, and those would be essentially the two things that we're concerned with, is that small businesses really rely on technology these days because it can be very expensive hiring, training, and developing an employee. The other thing that happens is that small businesses are a community within themselves and a community within the community. And so often, like for example, with the volunteer fire companies, when I ran a business, I would lose half my staff because when the fire whistle ran, they all ran out to help the community. And so, but that's what makes a small business successful. And so they have a significant investment in employees. And so they have to be able to anticipate what may happen should the community or their families be impacted, which is an even greater challenge because the cost of running a small business can be quite excessive, as opposed to a larger company where they can have a lot greater degree of sophistication in terms of responding.
Sure. I mean, there's a time management issue here too, because small business people are so busy running and operating their businesses, and I can't possibly find time to sit down and begin to make a plan. But is that part of the council too, is just making sure that you take the time to take step one, create a phone tree perhaps? I mean, are you having those kinds of discussions with business people?
Absolutely. And it's huge. And it's the last thing you want to think about as a business owner is what could end my business. And unfortunately, that's what we're asking them to do. We're asking them to step back and think about all those horrible things that could go wrong, and what are the little things that you can do easily, quickly, simply to help get yourself through it. Like you said, make the phone tree. Again, keep it simple, but you got to think about it.
Yeah, when the skies are sunny, there's a sense of peace of mind. Oh, I don't need to do this. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you deal with that a lot in terms of counseling, Mario, in terms of budgeting time, but then and we can get into it in a minute, sort of budgeting. There are some costs to this kind of planning, and we can talk about that perhaps. But what are your thoughts about sort of time management, Mario?
Well, our challenge is to make them aware that developing a business continuity plan is absolutely essential for them. And what we do from a cost perspective is to basically say, how much time is involved in terms of you taking a Friday afternoon and maybe even bringing the Red Cross in, which has a really great program for trying to assist small businesses and work through those things of developing the tree. And if you don't have them, we try to explain to them how much of a cost it will occur to recover from an even greater loss.
Okay, and so part of that business continuity planning, and there's no sort of form document for this. I mean, there are resources online that maybe we can share with viewers too, but the first step is some of the things we've already been talking about. But are there tools now online to help people get started? Because that's my sense, is that if I'm a small business owner who's watching this discussion, I'm wondering, okay, how do I break this inertia? How do I get things going?
FloridaDisaster.org is really the central website for that. It's a very dynamic website. In the upper right-hand corner, when you click on that website, there's a link that helps a small business owner develop a business plan, and it's pretty much cloud-based. It goes through a series of questions and answers. I believe it's stored online, and should you need to access it or update it. It's very helpful to the small business owner because it's relatively easy to develop.
Yeah, so part of that is just taking the time to start. I imagine that once you went through that process, and as I'm a journalist, not a small business owner, but that you begin to at least get a sort of idea for what this process is by engaging in that exercise. Probably makes a lot of sense.
It does, and it's very simple. If you take the 10-15 minutes, what it helps you think through is what information would I need? It helps you, that phone tree. Well, what are my insurance policies? What are my coverages? It helps you just consolidate all of that information that I know you have as a small business owner. You've got it all there. Your business license makes you bring it all into one place and sit down and really look at it and think about what it is that you might need to have with you in the event of the worst.
Is your experience that there are more businesses that just haven't begun thinking about this, or they wait until, again, sunny day today, but then once something happens, then the places where there is instruction are full? I mean, is your experience that more folks, there's many people to reach in a discussion like this?
I would like to think that number is getting smaller, that as we're seeing Superstorm Sandy, as we've seen Katrina, as we've seen numerous other events across the country, it's making people think a little bit more about the preparation, about what they need to do.
What if?
The what if scenario. Unfortunately, a lot of the folks that I come across haven't even thought about it, haven't even started thinking about it.
Wow. And
when you bring it up, they kind of glaze over, no, I don't want to think about the bad. I'm doing well now. I don't want to worry about that. And that's kind of that bridge that we have to gap, or the gap, no denial.
Yeah.
This could happen, and you need to step back and take a look at it.
Well, sure. How about you, Mark?
I have to agree. It's a very big challenge for us to really get the small business owner to focus in and develop these business continuity plans.
Is that a conflict of the entrepreneurial spirit? Meaning, oh, I can't possibly do this. I have so many other things to do, so we're prioritizing. But in many ways, this is such a critical priority because, frankly, if something happens, you're not going to be in business.
Entrepreneurs are what we call moderate risk takers, and I think they kind of put that on that side of the fence to say, well, you know what, we have such a priority list of action items to get through just to be successful in business that is something they tend to view that they should give up. And unless they're really truly impacted by that, that's when it gets their attention.
Right. I mean, I think probably this is the time of the day factor. I mean, I'm constantly thinking if I could only get my clone to get off the couch and stop eating bonbons, I could get more done. But I think that's the case, is that people really probably feel like this is not a priority. But hopefully a discussion like this would help people sort of figure out what steps they need to take. You both mentioned, we started to talk about technology, and we were talking before we started recording about an iPhone app, and that there is new technologies all the time. And I think given tablets and the popularity of that, what is out there other than the site that you mentioned, which sounds like a great resource? Talk about that app, if you would.
Oh, My Biz Shield. I don't know if you see that one. It's out of Australia, which is really quite interesting. It's a free app. It's one of those devices that maybe helps a small business owner more adopt a business continuity plan, or they can at least sign that task to somebody to develop it. But it's a really easy app to use. And again, it walks you through the series of questions. You don't necessarily need to have this tremendous knowledge base to develop a business continuity plan. What it'll do is it'll ask you a series of questions. How many employees you have, who are they, what are the roles in the business, what are the phone numbers, what are the mail addresses. And it can go as far as asking you who their parents are and where they live, because sometimes an employee will leave and go to other family members.
One more time what that app is. What's it called?
My Biz Shield.
Available in the iTunes. And those are the simple things I think that can probably get you going and begin to create some awareness for sure. Let's talk a bit about insurance issues, because insurance I always find sort of complex, and my eyes glaze over. I'm not sure what to make of it. But you mentioned certainly making sure that the policies are probably in a watertight bag. Some of the basic things we know about hurricanes or storm planning specifically. What are some other insurance issues that maybe aren't so obvious that small business owners should consider?
Understand your policies. Know what your coverage is. One of the great things about being in Florida is your agent has to explain to you in English, clear as can be, what your policy covers, what your limits are. I can't tell you the number of individuals that we've come across that don't understand the concept with flood insurance. Whether or not you're in a flood zone, if water rises and comes into your business, that's a flood. If you don't have flood insurance, you don't have coverage. So it's really, really important that they gather that information, know what coverages they have, know what their responsibilities are. Do I have to take pictures of my damaged equipment before I throw it away? Or does the adjuster have to see it? Find out those things now. The last thing you want to be doing is trying to worry about that in the middle of a disaster.
I think it's very hard. I mean, we've seen those documents before. They're full of legalese. They're long. It's very small type. It's hard to understand what the coverage is. But maybe you can explain a little bit about why Florida has a more. I mean, they're compelled to be clearer in that language. Is that the deal?
Yes. It's very clear that you and your agent has to be able to explain to you what your coverages are, your declaration page, when you look at it, what all of those things mean. So what's happened is our insurance policies that we get have gone from being 10 pages to now 100 pages, because they are required to explain all that out. And the other thing is, do not be afraid to say, stop, I don't get it.
Right, repeat that, explain
what does this mean?
Right.
What does this really mean? And have them explain that to you so that you do understand.
Yeah. What about you, Mario? Any thoughts about what do you counsel some of your clients in terms of insurance issues?
The SBDC has a specific role in that in what we call bridge loans. That's one of the things that we're charged as a center to do to come into the community, is that a lot of these small business owners have business interruption insurance. Yeah, and that might not pay off for maybe 90 days or a year and a half to be able to really understand how much money they're entitled to. So we actually assemble a board of bankers. And what we do is we assist in the processing of the bridge loans. And that's an interest-free loan up to 18 months. And at least it gives you enough time to basically keep your business up and running and maybe help with some of the recovery efforts until your insurance kicks in.
So, I mean, business continuity insurance is an outward cost, and insurance is always something people grapple with. Do do I lay out this money for something that I don't know is going to happen for peace of mind? Are things evolving in terms of that product?
One of the things we tell them at the Small Business Development Center is that you need to know your insurance person as much as you know your IT, your CPA, any other professional that you're aligned with. We feel that insurance and having the proper type of insurance is paramount to the success of your business. You need to be properly insured in the world these days, so that the challenge for a small business owner is that if you have something happen, you've got to continue to run your business. And you've got to hand that project off to the insurance company to deal with. If you don't have insurance, then you as a business owner are dealing with the second issue.
Any other thoughts to add?
No, I mean, it's spot on.
Right.
It's one of those, it's again, another one of those necessary evils that you've got to look at it, you've got to think about it. And yeah, you may have to put a little bit out there, but in the long run, having that protection and that reassurance.
Clearly it pays off.
It pays off.
Even if it doesn't pay out. So if that's a bad pun or no otherwise. We're talking a lot about imagining hurricanes, and often this discussion is about catastrophic storms like hurricanes. We saw what happened with Sandy. We certainly saw haunting images of Katrina. I was in Hurricane Andrew in Miami in 1992. You know, those are the things that linger. But this is not necessarily limited to hurricanes. We talked about floodwaters or that kind of thing. What is less obvious about the kinds of disasters that maybe we're not thinking about, that small business owners may not be considering when we think about this kinds of planning?
Well, and it's things as small as a pipe bursting in the business, or heaven forbid a fire, some electrical short that occurs. Those can put you out just as quickly as a hurricane or a tropical storm or a flood. Losing your data. If you lose your accounts receivable and your accounts payable information, you have some type of an IT crash, that can be devastating. It could be a loss of your staff. If you have that one staff member, and we all have them in our place of employment, that one person who knows everything, knows where all the keys are, knows how to get everything, if that person isn't there, how quickly could that shut you down too?
That's a really, really important considerations. Mario, what about you?
She makes some really great points. There can be a secondary and even third impact as a result. For example, your staff might not be impacted, but I'm reminded of a situation where a garment factory was basically held at gunpoint, and there was 5 employees in the factory, and the employees were so traumatized at the event that they lost entire staff over a period of a year. It was something that happened very, very slowly. And so, small businesses really hold on tightly to the employees because it costs a lot to develop them, and small business owners have to be well aware of the little things that can impact them. And over a period of time, there can be some long-term implications.
What are some tips? I mean, part of what you're talking about overall, especially given the scenario which you just described, is awareness, understanding, being ready for the unexpected. I mean, how can you be really ready for the unexpected? But you mentioned visiting the Celestial Seasonings plant, and they had things posted on the walls. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what businesses might do that are sort of creative or different that help, again, make everybody a part of this issue.
Well, that's the challenge of small business owners. How do we communicate to our staff on an ongoing basis how to properly respond? And I was just in Boulder, Colorado about 3 weeks ago, and one of the things about the Celestial Seasoning plant is they eat toward the factory. And they do something like 10 million tea bags a day. It's an incredible operation. And you can't afford to have that plant shut down. And as we're going through the plant tour, hanging at each one of the doors was a disaster evacuation plan hanging right there, and a little flip chart as to the procedures that kind of go through, because all businesses have some sort of evacuation plan where they meet in a parking lot, and somebody just grabs that and goes out the door. There's a lot of little things that you can do as a small business owner that don't have to be so grandiose, and also communicates to employees that we really care about you.
Those are great tips. Anything else to add?
No, that's huge. If employees think that you care, and you really go through and you show it through the creation of plans and making them a part of that, they're going to remain loyal to you. And we've seen that time and time again in disasters.
Sure.
If employees feel valued and they feel like they have a vested interest, they're part of that company, no matter how big or small, they're going to stand by you.
Yeah, it's amazing the stories that you hear about how people rally, not only for their coworkers, but and they'll work tirelessly. In part, maybe that's a way to divert from the issues that they're facing at home. But aside from retention, the issues like benefits and other things, by providing a space where people feel like they're cared for, turnover is expensive, and so that makes a big difference. We've got a little bit of time left, but Holley, you carry around 2 cell phones. I've known you for a while. When things get active, when there's a storm threatening, and again, we haven't had one in a while, maybe you can share a little bit about what the sort of the hierarchy, the structure, what your life is like as emergency begins to become a true emergency, a potential emergency becomes a true emergency.
And you've seen it, 2 cell phones and you still can't get a hold of me, plus the phone on my desk. It does. We start monitoring these things well in advance. When there are little blips on the map, we're already watching. And as they start approaching and coming closer and closer, we're communicating not only internally within the county with public works and obviously fire rescue and law enforcement. We're also starting to communicate with the community. We're starting to communicate with our business partners. We're trying to get the information out as early as possible so that you know what we're doing out in the community. It's not a secret. You pretty much know everything as soon as we do. And that way, as business owners, you can look at this and say, okay, well, the county's going to be calling for an evacuation for this reason, so maybe we need to shut down a little early so you guys can go home and do what you need to do to get ready, and we need to do here. It helps the businesses and it helps the community plan ahead so that afterwards you've got a little bit more of resiliency, you've got a little more flexibility. It's not something that just jumped out from behind a tree at you.
Makes sense. When there's an actual storm threatening, Mara, are things happen at the SBDC, or are you making sure that your team is set and cared for?
We need them ready to go.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
It starts at the state level, and what we typically do is within our center, we start 7 days out. And it's a morning reminder within our own center to make sure that all our information is up and running. The thing that we have strategically are these 2 mobile access centers that we pre-position and prepare them to go in the specific community. And what small business owners should know, just like what Holley said, is that there's a whole team of people that are ramping up based on where hurricanes occurring. And these people are highly trained. They've seen a lot of different types of situations and know how to respond very well. And we're just throwing a lot of reminders out there, but we actually have 10 people that are certified disaster recovery that do respond or are ready to go as needed.
Yeah, and in my experience, having lived in Florida for a couple of decades, is certainly we have a tremendous amount of assets in terms of knowledge and smarts to which are sitting right here at this table. But when you take a step back, emergency response folks, FEMA all the way up, have had to deal with criticism for planning and for response times. What's the state of things now in terms of your perception, and not necessarily talking about political stuff, but of how things are evolving, or how are things better than they were? Is your cooperation, and I'm hoping, and my sense is that it's better. Is that true?
We're very fortunate in the state of Florida that we have had a very long-standing relationship between our counties and the way that we all work together. Now, the head of FEMA was the director of emergency management for the state of Florida. So obviously that has helped us in Florida as well as around the country to see that develop even further and develop those relationships, so that now you have every state in the union that has signed an emergency compact that they'll go and help each other. You have the interstate emergency compact so that they will go and help one another. So it's very nice to see what we were doing in Florida be recognized now at a national level, and now start to see that grow and expand.
We're a trailblazer here in many ways.
Very much so.
And that's good to see. It's certainly a far cry from probably where it was even a couple of years ago.
Absolutely.
Mara, is that your
Florida is one of the best prepared states out there. Like right now, we're on a call list with Hurricane Sandy. Should there be additional staffing support up there? But a lot of different states actually look to Florida and how the different organizations kind of interact strategically. And Florida, I like to think, is a leader in disaster recovery and business continuity.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're learning all the time. With a couple minutes left, and I want to make sure we have time to give viewers any kind of parting thoughts about resources or that kind of thing. What's still yet to be figured out in all of this? What are things that you're working on now that will be the innovations of 3 years from now?
Really, to find a way to make this exciting, to get people to want to do this, and to really truly understand that little bit of time that you take out of we know you're busy, that you take to do these things, these few simple things will go a long way to making you and your business more resilient in the event something occurs.
Well, how do you make it exciting? I mean, maybe it's just that we've had a lively discussion and that's part of it, but I mean, that's probably the way to begin, just having this discussion. What about you, Mario? What do you think in terms of where are we going? What's still yet to be told in all this?
I have to agree with Holley. The biggest challenge is, and the goal is to get small business owners extremely aware of trying to prepare ahead of time. That's the challenge out there. And how we prepare going forward is we look at other ways in which people have done that, other community, other organizations, in terms of how they've developed how they've been successful to get a certain population to develop business continuity plans. But again, it's that challenge to really convey to the small business owner that you need to have some sort of pre-planning, and that in the long run your business will be thrive as a result of it.
Well, we've got about a minute left. I hope to our viewers that this has been helpful and informative and given you a starting place. Is there anything else that we missed in terms of resources that you'd like to add? Mario, I want to start with you. Is there anything else that we can?
Some great resources.
Well, I mean, just you are great. Both of you are incredible resources, certainly.
Yeah, the Small Business Development Center. We work off of a federal grant. We're actually housed inside the College of Business at USF, and we meet the university's outreach component. And you know, our job is to basically help people in the community, and primarily to help small business owners.
Holley, any parting thoughts in terms of resources, or how to, I don't know, what would you like to add?
As well as the FloridaDisaster.org, of course, the local emergency management offices are always available to assist with those disaster plannings and actually helping you understand what maybe some of your threats are and what some of the hazards and vulnerabilities you may face that you may not even be thinking about. Well,
certainly there's a lot of awareness that needs to be gained, but it sounds like to me that we're on the right path. I mean, again, we dodged another bullet this year, perhaps. I mean, we probably hear that a lot. Any last word about the chances of, we never know because the weather is always evolving. Well, when we say we dodged a bullet, we have to remember we had Tropical Storm Debbie and Tropical Storm Isaac. That's right. So Isaac, of course, during the RNC was a little more of a challenge in a different way. But Debbie, we had a lot of folks that were impacted. We had businesses that were impacted quite heavily by that. Didn't impact the entire county, but there were certain regions that did have issues. It's not if, it's when, and it's not necessarily me or you. Well, we'll leave it at that. To our guests, to both of you, thank you so much for your incredible advice and sharing your knowledge today. And to our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time.
You don't have to. Left-handed people are a little bit more creative. I'm going to say nothing.
Left-handed people are smart.
They are.
I have it. Dad, do you want to get the phone?
No.
Every year, 1 million families face losing their homes to foreclosure. If you're ignoring your mortgage issues, things will only get worse. Call 1-888-995-HOPE because nothing is worse than doing nothing.